Good evening, Keto and Wrestling family. Matt Joyce here with another live stream tonight of episode 2 of Against the Grain. Live here tonight, we talk about Monday Night Wars here tonight live. Hope you guys are ready. We're going to go diving deep in and we're going to have a great time. We're going to explore exactly what happened from start to finish, and I can't wait to do so. And of course, we're going to be joined with our co-host tonight, Rorito Gonzalez. Let's welcome in Rorito right now.
Quiet on the set. Can we please have quiet on the set?
Everybody, welcome in Rorito.
Awesome! I came to play. There's a price to pay. Time for you to get down on me.
Hi, kids. To another edition of Against the Grain with Rory and Matt Troyce. Or should I say,
Live.
Matt Troyce and Rorito.
Here we go. That's right. What's up,
Are you
Rorito?
ready to rock?
That's right. That's right. How you doing, bro? You ready?
I'm ready as I can be since I'm the big show off out here.
Yeah.
The one and only show off.
Yeah. I mean, well, we have a lot to talk about. I know Monday Night Wars was such an amazing time to be a fan. Were you a fan during that time, Rory?
I've always been a fan.
Okay,
I've
great.
always been a fan. Since I was born, I've been a fan of wrestling all the time, all 39 years of my life.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I'd say so for me too.
Well, I would say that because, come on, considering how Puerto Ricans are passionate about wrestling, I can definitely think I lived, breathed, and ate wrestling since I was a kid. I would used to go to my dad's office and I would watch Saturday events in the TV of Puerto Rican wrestling and WWF wrestling at that time.
Wow, that's great. And did you watch the Monday Night Wars live?
I actually did. I was one of the flippers. I would go
Oh,
back and forth.
back and forth, yeah, Boots and I too. Yeah, yep.
Well, I definitely liked Raw, but obviously I'm like, this is so cartoonish. What the hell is this? When Vince had different characters, which we'll go in detail about that, I'm like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah. WCW, they were so edgy at the time, and you couldn't help but not check them out. I mean, you had to check them out because there was just so much buzz about them, and WCW was just, I mean, I don't want to say superior, but they had something there, and the WWE, they had to play catch up for a moment, I'd say. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Can I
yeah.
can I start with a little bit overview before we start with the Monday Night Wars from
Oh
what I
yeah,
remember?
yeah, absolutely.
I think the mainstream wrestling started between September 4th of 1995 and March 26th of 2001, when the Attitude Era started in November 9th of 1997 to May 2002. But not many people talk about the rivalry between Vince and actually Ted Turner started on Black Saturday. Do you know what Black Saturday was?
What was it? A pay per view?
No, Black Saturday was when Vince took over the time slot for NWA, which was on WTBS on July 14th of 1984. So he was
Wow,
actually crashing in their programming at that time.
wow.
So that was unprecedented because he was actually broadcasting in enemy territory because that's where GCW was being broadcasted as well. You know what GCW was?
Was that a different company?
That was Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Oh wow.
And that was one of the major things that Ted Turner wanted. Think about this. Turner pressured Vince to actually have that. And then he actually told him that they needed to sell to Jim Crockett Promotions. And
Really?
Vince and PBS was completely a disaster for WWF because they would have cartoon characters practically on there.
Oh, so it wasn't fitting the demographic then.
Exactly. It was like, let's say, like the drumster Josie back then in the 1990s and stuff like that. People wouldn't watch crap like that. Come on. Would you watch that?
No, I mean for maybe a little bit, but not
Constantly
religiously.
every week?
Yeah,
Come on
no.
now. And then WTBS was the home for Georgia Championship Wrestling, like I told you about, for 12 years. So that was a big no-no. So
Yeah.
you see the conflicts between them started from there.
I could see. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, but then again, I know the competition was fierce, but it didn't really boil over yet, though, right? It was still brewing.
It was still brewing. Well, let me tell you about one of the original first conflicts as well. Besides that, I would say it was when the NWA had Starcade, which equaled to WrestleMania. It
Right.
was the same day as the Survivor Series in 1987. How can you have two pay-per-views on the same day? That doesn't make sense, does it?
No, not at all. That seems like they were competing with one another.
Yeah, and he was like, no, I don't want to compete with you. But they competed against one another. A second conflict I would think was in there was the 1988 NWA Bunkhouse Stampede. And in that year, it was against what? None other than the Royal Rumble.
Royal Rumble.
Pay-per-view Bunkhouse Stampede. What was it? In January 24th. It was on pay-per-view. And what was the Rumble on? Do you remember the first Rumble? What was it on?
It was on network television, right?
In USA Network. That's right.
USA. Yes.
So what would you decide? Your parents, what would they decide in that area? Would you rather pay $39 in the 80s or $29, whatever it was, as opposed to something free? What would you rather buy?
Oh,
look at.
Definitely, I would want to look at the free one. I say from my parents' standpoint,
Not everybody could purchase that at that time. So that's another conflict that they had. But then that's when Ted Turner kept getting angry with Vince.
Oh, yes.
I would say there were many conflicts. Even in 1988, they had also WrestleMania 4. Do you remember WrestleMania 4? It was a major pay-per-view, obviously, for WWE.
In Trump Plaza.
Absolutely. But what happened? NWA had another thing, and it was free to counteract that. And what was it?
Wow. It was a which pay-per-view was that?
It was no pay-per-view. It was free TV, Clash of Champions.
Wow. Right. Clash of Champions, right.
But the key component about this is, okay, you want to see the WrestleMania pay-per-view like we're talking about, or do you want to see an NWA match, a 45-minute draw match between Flair and Sting for the NWA title?
Oh, that must have been amazing. Epic. Yeah.
Epic. Then after that, I think I heard about something else being WrestleMania 5, that they had the night Clash of Champions once again against WrestleMania 5. And guess again, what happened? They put Clash of Champions against WrestleMania 5. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat against Ric Flair. 2 out of 3 falls match.
Wow. They were really trying to compete, weren't they?
They were trying to push the envelope, like, come on, get away from us.
Yeah, that's crazy. But it's amazing that they were competing so much, and it never really was brought out into the public that they were like competing that much, but you could see it sudden, very very sparingly. You could see it, but until they really made the announcement that say a few years later when they brought Hogan in, then
Absolutely.
it was a huge turn of events, I'd say.
Well, think about the '90s. Prime time in 1993. Primetime wrestling was a thing in USA Network. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
In 1993, it was terrible. It plummeted in the ratings, and that's why USA Network told them to leave, and that's why Vince started with having Raw on the air.
Oh, live shows.
Absolutely, because the primetime wrestling was taped, and they had the announcers being in sound stages and studios and stuff like that.
Oh, right. So it wasn't it wasn't as unique then. It wasn't as spontaneous then as Raw was in the beginning.
Exactly, and you remember probably the first Raw. It was Yokozuna versus Coco Beware, and the Steiners were on there. The WWE WWF IC champion, which was Shawn Michaels, and who did the Undertaker face in the main event? Do you remember of the first Raw?
Yeah, it was an unknown name for I have to say, right?
Yeah, Damien Demento.
Demento, right?
And then
Demento.
you would see something in WCW like Cactus Jack having amnesia in Cleveland. In Cleveland, really? In Ohio? Don't we have a couple people who have amnesia in Ohio?
We might. We might.
Maybe that's where they got that storyline from.
Oh, you never know. You never know. But it's just wild how throughout the years the rivalry really started to come together between both companies. And what would you say would be like the inciting factor there? You'd
The
say.
inciting factor was like many people talk about Scott Hall, Kevin Nash joining WCW, but I actually believe it wasn't none of that. It all started when me, Gene Oakland, and Bobby Heenan joined WCW in 1994. Do you remember that they were probably in 1994? You saw Bobby Heenan, the first episode of Raw, trying to get in as a female.
Oh, right.
And then you happen to see Bobby Heenan like 2 or 3 months later at WCW. Why? That was a
Yeah,
big deal.
yeah, that was a huge deal. I mean, so you'd say those are the first two that really crossed over first were the
Those are the
announcers.
first two, I would say so. But then
Yeah,
after that, you see Hogan signing in 1994 as
yeah,
the red and yellow Hulk Hogan. And I'm
yeah.
sure you remember that big deal.
Oh, it was huge. That was everywhere on network television. I mean, you could see that everywhere.
It just seems like Eric Bischoff wanted to give Hulk Hogan creative control, concessions, and everything, being the red and yellow Hogan. But Hogan never wanted to join WCW. He said to Vince originally, I want to retire from wrestling. I don't want to compete against you, Vince.
Yeah, yeah,
Come on
that's
now.
true.
I don't
That's,
believe that at all.
I mean, but I think he wanted to stay, but there was this whole thing with the steroid trials, and there was a big falling out, I'd say, between Hogan and Vince, and I just think that after that, I think Hogan had to go somewhere else. Well, he was going to focus on acting, I think, and then
He was in Thunder in Paradise. Remember that?
yeah, that show, yeah, and
And it was produced by TNT
yeah,
and
it was a
WB and stuff like that. All
yeah, yeah, it was a pretty good show too. I remember that, and yeah, if he didn't get contacted by what was it, Ric Flair, Eric Bischoff, and yeah, I don't think he would have got back into it.
I truly believe that's what pushed them over the hump to get back into wrestling. I remember Hogan talking about to the aspect that he wanted to go back into a right situation. And that made sense because Bischoff went out there to his house and told him, read it over and you tell me what you think. At that time, he would get anything he asked for.
Right, right. It's true. And then I think yeah, I mean, I guess he got everything on a silver platter, Hogan. Yeah, everything he wanted, and then he just did what he had to do, became the top guy, almost immediately, right? He became champion right away, and yeah, rest is history. I mean,
We absolutely know all about that, but there's something we're not talking about besides that. We see in 1994, what do you see happen? Nitro comes about, and the first Nitro begins on TNT. Who was the first person to cross over in that aspect into Nitro?
oh,
If you
that's
remember that.
yeah, Lex Luger,
Absolutely, in the Mall of America. And it was
right?
one day after his contract had expired.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that wild? That's crazy.
It was absolutely, I'm like, why? When I saw that, I was like, but I just saw him last week in
Yeah,
Raw. And then, how can that be? What?
yeah. That was wild. I mean, and he was one of many to jump ship, Lex Luger. But you know, I think they were offering more money, and it would just less dates, and I think it was just they saw an opportunity. A lot of these wrestlers from WWE, they saw an opportunity to capitalize on the business, and hey, you can't hate on them for that. They were just looking out for their own best interests, but
I
you
remember
know.
being like the same thing when that happened. We also saw in 1995, we saw Medusa, Alundra Blaze, show up and throw the belt into the trash.
Right, right. Now that I think was a really big
Low
turn.
blow.
Yeah, that was a really big shift of the tide there when she tossed that title into that trash can. I mean, that was so symbolic of what was happening. Like this is a war.
This is definitely a war because it's like that's like the cardinal rule of wrestling. You don't throw a belt around, let alone the other company's belt. That was like, oh hell no, you're gonna do that to me. You're gonna start something with me.
In the trash, nonetheless. I mean, they
Yep.
threw it in the trash. I mean, that was insane. I mean, during that time period, I mean, if you were watching that really signified so much. Like you knew there was something behind the scenes going on if you saw that, and then it's just really a snowball effect from that point on.
I
As
wonder if
to
he did it reluctantly or if she did it on purpose. I wonder that.
That's a good question. I'd say I think that Eric wanted it done. I'm sure Eric Bischoff would have wanted it done, but I'm sure that Alundra Blaze, she was doing better in WCW. Maybe she was offered a better contract, and yeah, she did what she thought was best for business. So it was huge though, and because of that, I think that's what made Vince so much more worried about what happened with Bret Hart in a few years later with the WWF Championship at the time, and he did not want that to happen again. I mean, if that can you imagine if that would have happened if Bret did that in WCW? That would have really put the nail in the coffin.
Definitely. And everybody would have kept being at Nitro, watching Nitro and WCW.
Forget it. Yeah, it would have been.
What did Harper say?
He said she admitted during her Hall of Fame speech that she was against it at first.
Well, that makes sense. But also, we want to talk about something very important about that is that was she wrestling in WWF? Let's talk about that a little bit. Alundra Blaze's feuds that she had back then, they were against Bull Nakano, right?
Yeah.
Bertha Faye, really? Come
Bertha
on.
Faye, yeah, Bertha Faye, yeah.
There was no moolah in there anymore, right? How many female wrestlers did WWF have at that time? Like four wrestlers, female
you
wrestlers?
You could count them on one hand, pretty much. Yeah.
I think I called the entire roster between them three right there.
Right.
Because I don't think Wendy Richter was there, was she?
I don't think she was at that time. No, I don't think so. And yeah, that's wild. Like how how slim the women's division was back then. But yeah, I mean, she probably had a lot of more opportunity in WCW. So hey, that's power to her at that during that time. But
but let's talk about that as well. Who did she have in WCW? Nobody, hardly ever, as well.
Yeah, you're right. She didn't. Yeah, it was just a, she was just a face from WWE, WWF, and
she came into WCW exactly, with 3 people in the women's division to go to a company. She was the only one practically in it, and they were giving her money just to sit on her butt or her ass because she was doing nothing practically. That's how I look at it. They were saying, "Oh, she's a WWE star. I gotta come get her out here."
Yeah, that anybody, like, they were getting so much talent from WWF, and they were just grabbing them left and right. And WWF at the time, they didn't have any guaranteed contracts, and everyone was independent contractors. So it was like, I guess it was so easy for them to get out of their contracts with WWF and jump ship, and it was just a good business decision on their part. Don't get me wrong.
I look at it 320 days in WWF as opposed to 120, 150 days in WCW. What would you decide?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would definitely do WCW over WWF at the time, and because you're thinking about longevity, you're thinking about more money, and yeah, more time to spend with your family, and it's just a big, a really good decision on your part to do that, But then again, what do you think was going to happen? They're going to bring over all this talent, and sooner or later, what do you think was going to happen? The bubble was eventually going to burst if they couldn't keep up the momentum. But yeah, as you can see, they had so much momentum, for many weeks. Many weeks, they were beating WWE Raw in the ratings for weeks on end.
Yeah, but wait. You haven't started with the basis of what we're talking about. In 1996 is when Nash and Hall decided to actually sign with WCW. And that was in April of 1996. By then, in May of 1996, May 19th, 1996, I remember one famous thing, the curtain call.
Right.
And what happened in the curtain call? Have you remember?
Yeah, these guys, they were bad guys. Well, Nash was a bad guy, and so was Razor Ramon. They shook hands, and they with Shawn Michaels, Triple H.
They embraced.
They embraced in front of the live audience that never seen that before, where heels and baby faces came together to congratulate each other. It really broke kayfabe, and the fans legitimately knew at that point in time that this was a show, and it's just wild how that event snowballed into so much different things that happened
The following week, I would say, I remember Memorial Day 1996 is when you see, hey, yo,
Yeah, hey
say
yo.
hello to the bad guy. Come
I
out
re-
in Nitro.
I remember that. Yeah, but they they used they used Scott Hall as a ploy almost. Like they used him as still a WWF character, like a rogue character who was
Like a
invade
road mod.
invading WCW.
Absolutely.
Definitely created a lot of buzz, and then he said he had another guy with him.
A big guy.
Yeah, a big guy, and then what? Then Nash comes along.
And what happened when Nash shows up? Say hello to the big guy.
Yeah,
Which,
Kevin
by the
Nash.
way, they did not know how to use Nash and Hall when they were in WCW in the past because they had the Diamond Stud, they had what's his name, Vinny Vegas, Oz. Those characters were crap,
Yeah, yeah, they were, yeah. But then
but they needed to capitalize on it because they were in their momentum when they were in WWF. They got their money's worth. Absolutely, Vince. I bet you was like, go out there, get your money, because I'm not going to guarantee you any of that. But gratefully, it was Vince's decision to let them go to expand their horizons. And look, he made them into stars. They were appreciative of what he did to him, and then they went jump ship, and they did it.
right, yeah, that's true. But they became a viable tag team. They call them the Outsiders. But they still had another layer left. To peel. And when they said they had a third guy, right? So the third guy, that's what really cultivated a lot of fans. They were
Interest.
all like,
There was
"Who's
a
the
lot of interest.
yeah? Like, who's this third guy? Who is this guy?"
Who okay, let's talk about that a little bit more. I'm going to tell you before we continue talking about the third guy. Okay, I remember when that was a thing. I was living here in Puerto Rico, obviously.
Yeah,
But I'm like, who's going to be this third guy? Who's going to be this third guy? But I didn't buy the pay per view. Obviously, my dad didn't buy it and everything like that because I wasn't that into WCW that much in that
yeah,
era.
yeah,
So then, but I remember hearing something about a promo that they were doing local TV because they were going to have Hall and Nash here in Puerto Rico for something similar or something like that. And
yeah,
then when the tape came out in VHS, and people don't know what VHS is nowadays,
yeah.
we can explain it another time. But I was like, I gotta see it. I gotta see who this third guy was. So I was intrigued to see who the third guy was. Who were
Yeah.
you wanting the third guy to be? I was telling myself when I actually got the DVD, I was saying to myself way beforehand, it's gotta be Sting. It's gotta be Sting. It's gotta be Sting. They have to
Oh,
do this.
oh, Sting. Yeah. I thought it was honestly. I thought it was Lex Luger, honestly. But again,
Because he was a former WWF guy, obviously.
yeah, I thought it was Lex Luger, but just like you, I didn't see the pay per view. We didn't order uh, pay per views back then, but yeah, the next day in school, all my friends were talking about it, like the pay per view. They're like, "Oh, Hulk Hogan's a bad guy now." I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it when I was hearing it. I was like, "What? Really?" I was like,
Hulk
"Wow,
Hogan? Really? I didn't see it until like 4 months later when the VHS came out. I was so
wow,
far back. I was like that. I was like, what? I was
wow."
so
So
anxious 4
wow,
months later. I didn't watch it until 4 months later. I was looking forward to the pay per view, but I didn't see it in
yeah,
the actual pay per view. But I waited 4 months to get the actual VHS so I could see it on VHS. and I didn't see any wrestling from that time until I got the VHS. Think about that.
That's wild. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just mind-boggling to see what was transpiring. I mean, and when Hogan turned heel, that was huge. I mean, no one expected that really, right? For Hogan to be the bad, to be the third member.
I was like in shock after I saw that, and then I saw when he said, "These fans can stick it, brother."
Yeah.
And then when Mean Gene got hit with a soda can or a beer can, now they can't do that. Throw cans like that and stuff like that. You know that, but that was amazing.
I remember they
Seeing
were
that.
throwing trash all over the ring. I mean, it was wow. Yeah, they can't do that anymore, right?
Absolutely. You get thrown out immediately. Any thoughts from our people in the chat? I'm seeing some comments out here that they want to
Oh yeah, these
let us
guys.
know about anything.
Yeah, I don't see anything about I don't see anything about the Monday Night Wars. we
Well,
talk.
what I'm telling you is I particularly was like the Hollywood Hogan angle worked to a T. I'm thinking that Hogan didn't want to do it, but then they're like, I'm sure that Hall and Nash told him, Hulk, there's gonna be big money, brother, big money.
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, it was huge. I mean, I know Hogan knew it was going to be huge. That's why he jumped on it last minute. I mean, he didn't want Sting to get it. And can you imagine, Sting, if Sting ended up being the third guy, I mean, yeah, I mean, that would have been
I
a,
don't think it would have been the same thing, Matt, because
you
it
don't think
needed
so?
to be somebody like WWF
Yeah.
identifies with the actual persona of these guys who are outsiders from WWF. If you put Sting, it's gonna be like, bleach blonde guy. That's gonna be the flavor type of weak deal. He's gonna be lasting with them for about 3 weeks, 1 month, and then nothing would come of it. That's how I look at it. Would you have seen it that way, or would you have seen it completely the opposite?
I think they would have just changed up Sting's look, I don't think they would have brought him in with uh, bleach blonde hair. I think they would have changed his look. But honestly, I think it would have been big with Sting too. But like you said, I think Hogan, that was really a kicker to the fans, and no one expected Hogan to turn on WCW. You know, and that was just so huge. And honestly, I don't know if Sting would have been that big, but I think Hogan, I like you said, I think Hogan would have been the better choice, and obviously, NWO, it was one of the greatest factions in the history of wrestling, in my opinion.
I think that's what actually helped push that over the edge completely into the next level. And also something that we don't talk about when they actually did in WWF around that same time frame, if I remember correctly, is when Vince was doing those Millionaire Ted skits. Remember those?
Right, with the Huckster and Nacho Man.
People were flipping back and forth to see if they were actually Hogan was in the walker and oxygen and stuff like that. I found that I was cracking up like crazy.
I found that, yeah, it was so funny to see that, and Billionaire Ted, and they had, what they call Mean Gene Okerlund.
Gene, whatever, I don't remember.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I mean, I remember
Nacho
the
Man, Billionaire Ted,
yeah,
and you saw
yeah,
Vince Russo was in the boardroom in one of those.
he
If
was.
you remember that correctly.
He was. Vince Russo was, and then they uh, they also had a match for the pre-show WrestleMania 12.
The Huckster against the Nacho Man with Billionaire Ted as the referee.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was that's hilarious.
Maybe I was the voice for the Nacho Man. Oh yeah.
It sounds like it sounds like yeah. I mean, I remember that was so funny. It was like this is where the big boys play.
And then
But
I particularly didn't like one thing though.
what's that?
I didn't like they were doing that, but it was great fun. But I didn't like that the aspect is like these wrestlers are so washed up they had to go to the big boys company. And then the other company's like, oh, we have characters that are Doink the Clown. We have
Yeah.
Duke the Dumpster Drozy. We have the Goon. What did we have in WWF in 1994, 1995, 1996?
Oh,
People, everyday jobs. Look at Kane, Isaac Yankem, the
dentist.
everyday dentist.
I mean, he was a crazy dentist, but he
Well,
was a
I'm
dentist.
sure you would want one of those for you.
Yeah.
Or would you rather have Britt Baker?
Oh yeah, definitely Britt
That
Baker.
one
Yeah,
you can. That one you can.
yeah, definitely. But
You know what I like particularly after that? One particular thing that you might like was what
what
I think actually pushed the envelope for WWF
what's
was
that?
when Stone Cold went to the Pillman House in Kentucky. That
Oh
was to me the energy booster that they needed in 1996 when actually Stone Cold went to attack him with the gun that Pillman pulled out the gun on him. I
yeah,
think that's where they started pushing the envelope more.
that was a little bit too much, though. I think I mean if I remember correctly, the broadcast ended with Pillman shooting the gun, and you
Yep,
didn't even know if Stone Cold got killed or not. You know, like
absolutely.
you had to wait until next week. It's like what? You had to wait
That's
a
the
whole
magic
week.
of television.
Yeah, you had to wait a whole week to see. Like, oh man, I heard a gunshot, but I hope Stone Cold's not dead. You know, but but they had to apologize for that the following week. It was too much. I think it crossed the line a little bit.
They needed to apologize to the USA Network and to all the sponsors.
Yeah, I just think they pushed it a little bit too much. I mean, it was they shouldn't have went that far with that angle, but I know they were trying to compete with WCW at the time, but still, I mean, I think they pushed the envelope a little bit too much with
They
that
both
angle.
had 1 hour at that time. So, like you said, you had to wait a whole week. Then 2 or 3 months later, we see that WWE starts with 2 hour shows.
Oh, right, yes,
And then after that, when you see the evolution of 2 hour shows for WWF, you see, I would say, like 2, 3 weeks later, ECW shows. ECW wrestlers showing up in WWF television. And I'm thinking, okay, they're doing this to captivate the fans' attention because they don't want people to go. They should have done that a long while before. What do
oh
you think?
yes, yeah. ECW, Vince bringing in ECW talent. That was just another way for them to bring in like more faces and to see like fresh new talent. And I think it was really good. Cross promotional branding there. I mean, for them to do that, and I just think they were trying to see different angles in order to compete with WCW. But
We should have seen that a long while before, though. I would have
was
said that. We should have
oh
seen ECW wrestlers or cross promotional stuff with wrestlers of other companies, like acting like they're fighting against each other from different companies because that's what we wanted to see. We didn't want to see Doink the Clown.
yeah,
We didn't
yeah,
want to see what's the name? The Godwins.
yeah. God,
I was like, what the hell? I remember seeing that Hogpan match that we talked about
yeah.
before with your trivias. I was like, what the hell? And then I'm like, you see them doing these things, and you're like, what the hell are they coming to? I'm thinking WWF needs to do this kind of stuff to get ratings. I'm not going to watch this anymore. And
No.
then I see 2 weeks later, I change back again to see WWF because I see something called Raw is War. What do you recognize when you see those letters or those words when it comes across on the TV set right then and there? What do you see?
Yeah, it's definitely a competition. They're
It's a
fighting.
war. It's a
Yeah,
war.
yeah, it definitely is a war, and they're trying to pull out the best stops, the best stunts, and trying to compete. Because hey, I think deep down inside they knew they had to, otherwise they were gonna go belly up. I heard Vince was like a few weeks away from shutting the doors at one point in time. And it was really becoming pretty difficult, to stay open, stay afloat. With WCW being so edgy, and they really were doing amazing things. With NWO, with they had they had Goldberg coming up out of the ranks, and it was just incredible.
You see Goldberg coming out, but you also see one aspect before that. You see the screw job happen, but then you know what I like the most that I would kind of identify myself with a little bit before that? You would see the angles USA versus Canada, Shawn Michaels versus Brett.
Oh, right.
You would see the Nation of Domination, stuff like that. Angles, different angles that you could only see out there in WWF. But I can identify with the angle of USA versus Canada because think about it. I'm Puerto Rican, even though it's a USA territory, but I can identify with as well being a foreigner, even though I'm an American citizen. But
Right.
also I can say I'm a foreigner as well. So I looked at it in both aspects as well. When I looked at that, and I was like, "Hey, this has symbolism a lot. Like they used to do like USA against Iraq and stuff like that with the Iron Sheik against Hulk Hogan and different stuff like that with Slaughter against Hogan.
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely. It
I
was
identified myself with all that.
it was definitely getting more edgy in WWF, but again, it was definitely a weird time because Shawn Michaels and Brett, two top guys of the company, they couldn't get along. It was just bound to happen that something was terrible was going to happen, and it's just a shame that it ended the way it did. The
Nothing
Montreal,
horrible happened. What are you talking about?
yeah,
It
the
was the
Montreal
best.
screw job.
The best thing happened for wrestling. The best thing happened for WWF. WWF became a bigger deal after that.
Oh
But
yes,
then
absolutely.
I'm like, what the hell is going on with this?
But
I don't see. Go ahead.
WCW, they dropped the ball with Brett. They had the hottest star in wrestling. At that time, after what happened, they literally had him right in the palm of their hands, and they just floundered him away. Like they didn't use him correctly.
That's what I was going to tell you. They signed him. What did they sign him for? To be a referee for the Starcade match? To be there for the Hogan versus Sting match and them having him as a referee? Really? I was
Yeah.
like, what kind of crap is that? That makes no sense. One bit. He's a wrestler. He's a wrestler, damn it, not a referee. Do
Yeah.
something better with him. You definitely needed something better to do in wrestling aspect like that. So I would say it was terrible what they did to him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just thought that it was they should have planned it better, and they didn't really even have to do much. They didn't have to really, you know, put Brett in a huge storyline, but they could have utilized him in such a better way. They could have put the title on Brett right away. They could have made him a legitimate star. They put him right in with Hogan. And they would have made some big numbers with Hogan, but they didn't do it. They just let it slip through their fingers.
I think that it was a shame what they did to him. But then you would see that they would come up with stuff like the undefeated streak for Bill Goldberg after that.
Oh yes,
Much
that
later.
that was a big thing. I mean, I remember as a kid watching that live with Boots, and we used to like it when Goldberg came on, and it was his matches were short and sweet, and you just knew you were going to see something amazing every time you saw Goldberg. And yeah, I mean that was definitely a great time, during Nitro.
You
And
know what you saw something special? I'm going to tell you what you saw special. You would see 7-0 one week, and the following week 18-0.
yeah, yeah, I know the number. Yeah, the numbers kept going up. It was going up a little bit too high at some points. I was like, how do you get this number and that number? But hey, it was still a legitimate streak though. They had,
Right.
and
Remember, we've talked about this in the past, you and me, in regards to this aspect. The streak really never took place. What we know about, remember, Chad Fortune beat Goldberg after his fifth match. People don't talk about that.
they don't. Yeah, it's just that I don't know. No one really. I wouldn't say they forgot it, but they probably didn't know that it happened. And yeah, I mean the streak was just a made up thing. You know.
It was a made up thing just so they could probably have all the people from WWF. Who's going to be Goldberg's next victim? Who's
And
gonna who's he gonna eat alive practically? Because it would be a squash match.
yeah, yeah, and it was just his matches were just so always so explosive, and I just knew Goldberg would eventually make it to a championship title match, but I didn't know when it was going to happen. But I knew it was on its way when he was competing with top talent eventually and main eventing, and then he main evented with DDP at Halloween Havoc, and I think that's when I'd say one of the turning points where WCW dropped the ball when they went overtime on the pay per view,
Yeah.
and we didn't see the ending of that match. Whoever ordered that pay per view didn't see the ending of that match, so they had to play it on Nitro the next night, and they had to refund just about everybody on that pay per view. Because even Poppy, he ordered the pay per view for us. He was on the phone with the cable company. He got a refund. Like, and but we as kids, we were upset. We didn't see the match. We don't know what happened. But still, it was. I think that was definitely a turning point. I think where you could see like some things are not right here.
You see, we talk about the war itself. The war itself was started by these companies based on what we started talking about, everything in the past, but not just these wrestlers. How can you look at this? Why would WCW bring in the Ultimate Warrior into WCW? Why would they bring in Brutus the Barber Beefcake, old and washed up? Why would you bring in? Obviously, the Nasty Boys were a great tag team. We can't say nothing bad about them, but they were old as well.
Yeah.
But you were bringing in the older guys of wrestling. When you looked at WWF, obviously, you were seeing younger talent. But when you go to WCW, you would be like seeing the 80 stars of WWF.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely tide was definitely turning, and you could see the writing on the wall. Like WWF was creating new stars and big stars too, but WCW, they kept relying on the talent that were legitimate stars in the 80s and 90s, and they were still trying to capitalize on that star power, but eventually, that star power would run thin, and it wasn't really as explosive as it was in the past, and fans started to recognize, hey, WWF, their product's getting better. You know, they got Stone Cold on there, they got Mankind, Mick Foley, they got Triple H, they got D-Generation X. I mean, they had The Rock.
You were
Somewhat,
getting a more edgier Undertaker.
The Undertaker, yeah, he became the
The
American
American
Badass.
Badass.
Yeah, and yeah, it was just it was amazing how all the talent was just becoming fresh, new, and the fans really saw that, and the fans, they gravitated to that, and it all came ahead, when I'd say on that dreaded Nitro, when Tony Schiavone, he would give the results of WWE Raw,
With
you
Eric
know,
Bischoff.
oh, it was Bischoff, yeah, Bischoff, and yeah, they gave the
3 minutes
results.
beforehand. 3 minutes beforehand.
Yeah, it was like, oh, you don't have to change the channel. Keep it right here. I remember watching that live. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that doesn't seem too interesting. Yeah, I'll stay on Nitro. But when when they said Mick Foley was going to win that title,
Your
I mean,
fan, you were his fan. Remember that. So
I
you
was a
got to
big
be like,
fan.
I got to change it. I got to change it.
Yeah, as soon as he said it, I was like, what? Oh, forget it. Yeah, we got to see that. And I wasn't the only one. Obviously, I think many others changed the channel. They were like,
60,000 people or 600,000 people were like, really? Wow.
and that right there, that was a huge tide
The
changing.
momentum swing started right there.
And yeah, that was it was huge, because then us fans, we saw that, hey, WWF at the time, they had such an amazing product at that time, and yeah, it was definitely something to compete with WCW. And what what a momentous occasion to see Mick Foley win the title on Raw. And yeah, a lot of the fans, they definitely were so in support of Mick Foley. He was the underdog, and
You know what I also liked about before that? I liked when they had Deadly Game, the tournament
oh
in
right,
St.
Survivor
Louis.
Series.
That Survivor Series was amazing. And it was right the year following the actual screw job. That was the actual next Survivor Series, right?
Right.
1998.
Yes, it was.
I remember being that in St. Louis. And then when I see McMahon has The Rock hitting Mick with chairs and everything like that, and then the face of the company, The Rock becomes the face of the company. I was like, wow, how he screwed Mick right there. But then how everything went about, like you're talking about, with Mick getting the title, how his character came into a bigger deal after he had been in a feud with The Undertaker, the Buried Alive match. Remember
Right.
that?
Yeah.
When The
Yeah, I remember that.
Undertaker's hand came up, that was fascinating. That got me more interested every time, more in WWF at the time, because it's like, oh, he's risen from the dead. It's amazing. It's great effects that WWF was trying to push everything to a bigger deal, because WCW at that time, practically, they were having the NWO Hollywood versus NWA Wolfpack and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who wanted to see that? If you would have left originally, let's say this, I don't know if you look at it like me, but I would say if they would have left only 3 members of the NWO, the 3 guys that were originally there, I'm sure that could have done a lot more damage for the next 3-5 years against WWF, as opposed to bringing in more members. Like obviously Ted DiBiase, Six, everybody that they would bring in. I was like, it's like the New York Yankees. Let's say that. They
Yeah.
buy everybody with money. That's how I
Hmm.
look at it. You can't do that. Just do it with the originals. Everybody's like, this is hot. This is hot. This is going to get you merchandise. But then when you would see them getting more and more members, you're like, okay, I don't like this. Why are you bringing in more people? And why would you bring another NWA Wolfpack? Why? That makes
Right.
no sense. Then you see angles like the taser deal that they
Right.
tased. It wasn't it Nash, or was it Scott Hall that tased Goldberg
Yeah,
for the
Scott Hall.
yeah. So I was like, what the hell? This is a way to end the streak. Then you have David Arquette winning the title. My gosh.
David Arquette. I mean, that was such a slap in the face of professional wrestling, I must say. And what a shame. What a shame. And I love the movie. Don't get me wrong. I love the movie. But when they decided to do that in professional wrestling, like in the live professional wrestling, I was just so dumbfounded by that. I said, this is really messed up. I mean, how could they do that? How could they do this? I mean, and they did
Insulting
it.
their integrity. That's what I looked at it. That's how I looked at it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was definitely insulting our integrity, and also that,
And intelligence too.
yeah, yeah, it was definitely like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I said, "What? David Arquette, the champ? I mean, how is this possible?" And it's just really it's really a shame, that they decided on that. But I think it was to promote the movie even more. But still, I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it was necessary for them to promote the movie to do that. But it was just really a shame that they stooped to that level. WCW. I mean, when they got Vince Russo in, and they tried
It was the
to.
death of
Oh,
WCW.
yeah, Vince Russo was just he didn't help at all. Like
He even won the championship himself. Come on now.
I mean, how he booked himself to win the title. I mean,
And then the
so-
following week, he releases the belt. He vacates it. I'm like, oh my gosh.
just a blatant misuse of
Power.
yeah, of his power. And but another issue was when the finger poke of doom happened. With Hogan and Nash. I
Yeah.
mean, that right there, that I mean, if you were a fan, I mean, I remember watching that live, and I said, "Oh, this is going to be a good match, Kevin Nash and Hogan." And all of a sudden, you see the finger poke of doom. I said to myself there, "Oh, this ain't going to last. This company ain't going to last." Right there, I knew it.
The
When that
death
finger,
of WCW.
yeah, when that finger poke of doom happened, I said it as a fan, and I was young at the time. I was a teen. I said, "This is done. This is over," and I knew it right there that it was done. with the finger poke of doom, because it was just such a horrible thing. I mean, how could they do that? I mean, they advertised a big match like that, and for that to happen, it just
You're
didn't.
gonna laugh about what I'm gonna say right now. Think
What's
about
that?
it. Their entrances lasted more than the match.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or actually, like my theme when you entered me on today, it lasted more than the match itself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just ridiculous, and I mean, for me, that's when I knew it was done. But what point did you legitimately think that WCW was done?
I honestly thought it was really done when they would actually have, I'm going to say, three major deals for me. The three major ones for me were when actually they brought in that guy that I told you about earlier, Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Beefcake. Okay.
I'm like, why would you bring him in? Number two, the finger poke of doom, obviously, like you're saying. And number three, most important of all, is when Russo gave Arquette the belt.
Oh
Those
yeah.
three, those three in that order. That's how I looked at it originally.
Yeah.
But WCW had no notion of what they were doing because they did something in a bash at the beach. Do you remember that Vince Russo
Oh
put Jeff
right.
Jarrett over against Hulk Hogan, right?
Right.
And then Hogan, what was it? Was it that he wanted to be over Hogan, or what was it? I don't remember
Oh,
clearly about that.
Hogan didn't want to drop the belt to Jarrett, and so Jarrett, when the match started, he just laid down on the mat for Hogan to pin him, and that was it.
Oh,
But
so the backstage politics crap.
yeah, so he laid down on the mat for Hogan to pin him,
And then the
and
following day, this is when Vince Russo talked, and maybe in the pay-per-view, he said, "I'm not going to take this backstage bull and everything like that
what he
that's
did
going
that
on."
he actually did that at the pay per view
And
that
then
same night. Yeah,
he
when
was
the Hogan.
wearing dirty laundry in the actual pay-per-view. That tells you how much turmoil the company was in.
Yeah, they he did that right on the pay per view, and then somehow Jarrett had the title, and he took on Booker T that night, and that was confusing to me. I didn't know why Jarrett was the champion at that point in time.
No, he reversed it. He did reverse the decision. That's what it was.
Oh, he reversed it. I see.
I remember that now, clear as day. He reversed it back then and there. They said Hogan won, and then he left the belt there, and he's like, I reversed this, and then Jarrett faced Booker T, and the rest is history. Booker T won.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was really at that point in time. Like I already knew WCW was on its way out, but that really was put the nail in the coffin there. That whole backstage politics thing, and then he said, "You're never going to see Hogan again." You know, he called him he called him a piece of shit. You know, and he's like, "You're never going to see him again." Like I was, wow, that's
I
crazy.
want you to talk something really important. Put my picture on the screen for a minute. Something in that picture that we haven't talked about. What do you see there?
That is when DX invaded Nitro.
Okay, tell us about that.
So D-Generation X decided to invade Nitro with a tank, and they were gonna try to get into the arena. And it was happening on a Monday Night Raw, and it was definitely monumental because yes, they were in a war, and it was really amazing watching that because I remember watching that live too, and it was just so cool to see that DX doing that. But
Imagine if they would have gotten in the arena. That would have been incredible. It was stupid Bischoff. It would have been great TV to let them in instead of close the damn gate. It would have been great TV because it would have given them both ratings.
What
Both
Bish,
of them.
Bischoff? He now regrets that. Bischoff now says if he could go back in time, he would have let them in.
If I
But
could have gone back in time, I would have actually changed my haircut. Come on now, dude. Look at this. Looks hideous, right? Oh, come on. What's he talking about? I'm telling you, another aspect that we don't talk about with that is pretty important. Raw would have a show, let's say in Brooklyn, and a place that would be 30 minutes away from Brooklyn. 2 weeks before, WCW would know where WWF was going to be, and they would book shows strategically near where they were going to be at. You remember that? That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happened with that.
yeah. I
And they were
remember.
doing that strategically so people would go to their shows and WWF's shows so they could give them a variety and everything like that. So they could be
Mhm.
like, ooh, where am I going to go? Dude, that was also another start of a war right there. Come on, dude. That was a big deal in itself. I enjoyed every little detail of that angle with that tank. That was magic in itself. And I'm glad WWF programming hit it with the ball. He hit it deep with that completely,
Oh
like
yeah.
home run when they put that on TV. And when they got the actual camera on the actual gate closing down, that was pure golden magic right there. I was like, yeah, right then and there. This is amazing. This
Oh
was the
yeah.
best that they did right there.
Oh, absolutely. That was huge. I mean, and that was definitely uh, an integral part of them of the tide changing. Watching that live. I mean, you just knew that hey, WWF they were bringing it. They weren't going to take it lying down, and they were going to compete.
That's
And
like Moxley said, that was in the scope in Virginia.
oh, okay, I see. But yeah, it was definitely a an amazing time to be a fan, I'd say, because you had so much like wrestling was just so big back then. And yeah, I mean, if you were watching the Attitude Era live, I mean, it was some of the best times that you could have been a wrestling fan because there's so much going on. Like you had wrestling, you had WWE, you had WCW, you had ECW. It was just it was so huge. I mean, there was so much going on, and this is before like the internet was really a thing, right? Like the internet wasn't really.
The dirt
Um,
sheets weren't around that long, or
yeah,
they weren't at all.
yeah, it wasn't really that prominent back then. So like you really didn't know what was going on like until the next week. You had to wait, and you know, I remember they had those hotlines back then. Like you could call up and find out some insider tips and insider tricks and stuff. What's going on? And I think they were like 99 cents a minute or something.
You're wrong about that.
Oh yeah, what do you mean?
You know what I'm telling you? Because I would call the hotline myself when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, my parents got a bill for $580.
Wow. Why?
I would call the hotline like crazy. During the pay-per-views, I would call WCW, WWF, and stuff
Wow.
like that. And my parents were like, "Oh, we're getting a bill here. Okay, this is natural." And then they look at the bill, they're like, $580. And then they're like, "Why is this so damn much?"
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I have no idea. And then they call it, and then they say, well, it's a 1-900 number. No, it's no porno. It's a hotline. And then my parents would be like, investigate what the number is because we only have a son and a daughter, and they don't
Yeah.
call those type of numbers. And neither does my husband. My mom would say to my dad, what
Yeah.
the hell is this? And then they would say, well, this is a WWF number, a WCW number.
Ooh.
What is that? And then let me check for you. And then when they tell them it's a wrestling company, they're like, Rory, what the hell are you doing?
Oh, jeez.
I saw one time in one of the Royal Rumbles, one of the first ones that Shawn Michaels won. I was glued to that damn thing for about 25 minutes,
Yeah.
waiting for Shawn Michaels after he won the actual Royal Rumble itself. They would say, Shawn Michaels is going to be live with you soon. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to talk to Shawn Michaels. And then they're like, Shawn Michaels has won. But right now, we're going to have you listen in to what Bret Hart had to say in the press conference in regards to the match. Just wait 2 more minutes and Shawn's going to be on the line. Okay, Shawn gets on the line, but it's a recording. Oh, it's great to actually have won the Royal Rumble. That's all he said in the.
Are you serious?
I was 20. It wasn't live. It was taped, like saying him saying that, and it was. I waited 25 damn minutes for that thing.
You
So I was like,
serious?
yeah. I was like,
Oh, damn.
$5 a minute. Imagine waiting 25
It,
minutes for that
wait,
crap.
it was $5 a minute?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, jeez. I thought it was cheap. I remember it being cheaper than that. $5 a minute.
When he won the actual Rumble, I remember that.
Wow, that's a lot of money, man.
But
Jeez.
then I'm like, geez, not a hotline. I'm like, what the hell? Just for that little conversation taped? I was like, damn.
Yeah,
Now you can resort to Roy to give you your insider information now. Don't call the hotline. I learned my lesson.
yeah. I mean, geez, that's a lot. I mean, I think we only called one time or something, but we weren't on the phone that long. We like a few minutes and we turned it off. But I think it was a couple bucks though. I remember that. But yeah, I mean, geez, that's a lot, Roy.
But sometimes I would be like, okay, my parents won't know. Like I saw one of the pay-per-views that my dad had bought. It was funny as hell because I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch the pay-per-view, and then they had fallen asleep, and I'm like, okay, and then I would call the hotline while they were asleep, and I'm like, okay, and then I would leave the phone off the hook while I'm waiting.
Oh, wow.
Like,
And
and then
they're
I'm like,
charging
okay,
you.
and they're charging you because you're
They
on the
charge.
phone.
Oh, they charge you the whole time. Jeez.
I was like, damn. But like
Jeez.
you're saying, those were the great times of wrestling when we actually thought wrestling was real, not like
Yeah.
now. The
Yeah.
actual wars was making us watch wrestling nowadays. If it wasn't for the wars, we wouldn't be watching wrestling today. Why would you be watching wrestling today? I don't
Yeah.
see anything major. I don't even like AEW. Why watch AEW now? It makes no sense. I
Yeah.
like the wrestling back then more than now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's definitely changed a lot, and it's not the same. I mean, I'd say WWE's it's okay. It's not that bad now. I mean, it's getting better. WWE, but yeah, AEW is not anywhere near well, what it was when it first started. Like
How did
it's
you feel when you saw Vince's character come about? We didn't talk about that aspect.
oh Vince, yeah, Vince was definitely I say a deciding factor in the war Monday Night Wars. I mean, in fact, Vince. I mean, I used to love to tune in to see what was going to happen between Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold every week. You know, it was always like very entertaining. You didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, it was wild. I mean, Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon, like that was one of the best rivalries ever in all of wrestling, and it was definitely a good time to be a fan. You know,
Everybody wanted to beat up their boss back then, and they're like, "Oh, I'm Stone Cold. Yeah, let me do that."
yeah. It was anybody. You know, a lot of people could relate to it. You know, and made him such a big star. You know, he was just such a I'd say like a household name, Stone Cold. He was so big in the Attitude Era, and very, monumental, and I'd say bridging the gap uh, in the audience. So it is just it's just wild because Stone Cold, he was fired from WCW.
Yep.
Like Bischoff didn't see the potential in Stone Cold. He let him go. And just see, like, I like to think that well, what happened with AEW in today's era, history repeats itself. Cody Rhodes, he left AEW, he went to WWE, and he's a huge star now. In fact, I think he's going to be the next top, face of the company after
We don't talk
WrestleMania.
about another aspect that you talked about these two right now. But remember that people didn't even give Mark Calloway a chance.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. Mark Calloway, he was in WCW.
Mark Callis.
Yeah, Mark Callis, mean Mark Callis, and they had all this talent under their noses, and they didn't know what to do with them, and they let them slip
Triple
through
H
their
was
fingers.
out there terrorizing. Remember that as well?
Triple H, yeah, Triple H terrorizing. Yeah, I remember that. It's just so WCW had a lot of opportunities to really capitalize. They had a lot of opportunities. It's just a shame that things happened the way they did because they had so much. Like they really were like the top. I'd say for at least a year. I think they were the top wrestling company for at least a year because the way they were doing pay-per-views, they had Michael Buffer announce the main events of pay-per-views. I mean, you just when you saw a WCW pay-per-view back then, like in the late '90s, it was like a legitimate wrestling pay-per-view. Like they made it feel special.
But
You
then you
know,
also saw in WCW something major that we haven't talked about is that they would bring in Megadeth, Kiss. Remember all
oh,
those?
oh, right, yeah,
All those
right,
groups? They were trying to attract to the general public because they were trying to bring people that were not into wrestling. Remember another aspect in the Monday Night Wars, it was Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman against Karl Malone and DDP.
DDP,
That
yeah,
brought the wrestling fans together, but it also brought the NBA basketball fans as well. Because
right,
you're
yeah,
seeing the NBA championship finals, which was
hmm
Dennis Rodman and the Bulls against the Utah Jazz and Karl Malone. But you would be seeing that. You would see everything in WCW was making sense. Everything was clicking. He would even be Jay Leno would be in wrestling,
yeah.
and you
Jay
would be
Leno,
like,
yeah,
it would be great because you could get fans that would actually watch the late night shows. They would come in to see wrestling. But if you see this nowadays, you're like, oh, okay, why is this going on right now? Back then, that was special in our eyes. Right now, if you do it, you're like, it's obsolete, it's garbage.
right.
But when we saw it back then, it was innovative. How do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. And but yeah, back then when you had a celebrity interact in any aspect of wrestling, I mean, it was definitely it felt big, because it felt like it legitimized wrestling, to have a celebrity come in and compete or even be like a special guest announcer or a host. I mean, it was definitely special to see that. But WW WWF at the time they were doing the same thing with
But they did it in the 80s. They did it way much more earlier. I mean,
yeah
And that's what made it more special that's what actually helped WWF in the early 1980s, because they would bring in Liberace, they would bring in Cyndi Lauper, they would bring in Mr. T, they would
Yeah.
bring Muhammad Ali, Billy Martin. Everything was like, wow, this was going to bring the industry together. This is why we actually loved wrestling as kids, I would say, because we're like, it's something different. Because if you like music, you were like, okay, I like this kind of music. And you see this guy show up in WWF and you like WWF, you're like, okay, I'm definitely sticking here and watching this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's just it is definitely getting more eyes on the product. What was going on, but it was just it was definitely different than it was in the past. But it is definitely aimed at legitimizing wrestling, and making it a household name, wrestling, and the whole rock and wrestling uh, movement there back in the 80s, and it really transcended into wrestling and for future generations. I feel like it was very monumental.
Instrumental. Very
Yeah,
instrumental.
yeah, definitely. What's up, RJ? Yeah, but it was definitely a sign of times to come, with professional wrestling, the way it was progressing, and with the times, the uh, the late 90s, that's television was getting more edgy, wrestling was getting more edgy. It was just and wrestling was the top rated shows during those times, of all of network television. And I just feel like wrestling was competing with each other, yes, but I'm sure they were competing with all network television at that time, and so
Remember, you don't talk about one aspect. Mondays, what do they have on Mondays? They
with
had
football,
Monday night football. Exactly.
football, yeah, football.
And then you have sitcoms in those time slots as well. Now, I don't know if I remember correctly, but sometimes they would have sitcoms, even though if they were reruns, you would have Seinfeld reruns around that time, if I
Oh yeah,
remember correctly.
yeah, that was yeah. They had like big shows during that time, yeah. Friends, Seinfeld. I mean, really big shows, and yeah, 90s was the late 90s. It was definitely a time, to be a wrestling fan, to be a fan of
Pop fan, pop culture.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, during that time, I mean, you literally saw uh Michael Jordan play basketball live, on TV. If you saw him, you know, one of the greatest basketball players in the history of basketball, or
If
you
not
saw,
the best.
if not the best, yeah, Mike Tyson. I mean, he was in his prime. I mean, you saw so much during that time period. I mean,
But wait, you just talked Mike Tyson. You don't talk about that aspect. That was part of the Attitude Era as well. He was
yeah,
part
Mike
of the
Tyson.
Attitude Era.
Mike Tyson. I think that was that really put WWE back on the map with the main
Tyson Austin.
yeah, with the main event of WrestleMania 14, and that really put him on the map. And if they would have did Tyson and Austin 1-on-1,
Oh,
I
brother,
think
that would have broken records.
I don't know why they didn't do that, right? Austin versus Tyson,
I'm
like
sure
what?
actually Mike Tyson would have actually swung for real.
Yeah, but I think why didn't they do that? That would have been insane. I
That
mean,
would have been like hell. Like he knocked out Shawn Michaels with that power punch at WrestleMania. Remember that? That was
I remember
incredible seeing that.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. It was huge. But you know who knows? Because Tyson's still in pretty good shape. Austin, he looks like he's getting in shape. Can you imagine if they did that?
That would be incredible, but it would be way too much past their prime. Even though he said in interviews he would love to wrestle or box
Yeah,
Austin. That would have been cool. I would definitely go to a WrestleMania for something like that.
that would be huge. But WrestleMania's 2 nights now.
Yeah, you gotta get a pretty penny now to go to WrestleMania 2 nights, like you say, and everything like that, and go out to a major venue like that and travel. Speaking
Yeah,
of travel, before we continue with this, Backlash is gonna be in Puerto Rico.
exactly. Yeah, that's gonna be great, man. I'm sure you're gonna have a great time out there.
I'm sure non-wrestling fans are gonna book tickets like crazy because they're crazy out here for Bad Bunny.
Oh, really?
He's gonna be the host.
They love Bad Bunny out there, right?
Yep, they love Bad Bunny out here. So imagine, you see, they're trying to capitalize with that. I read somewhere that the only reason that Vince brought Bad Bunny is because his granddaughter was actually listening to a song of Bad Bunny. Think about this.
Really?
And he's like, "What the hell are you listening to?" Bad Bunny? And he's like, "Who the hell's Bad Bunny?" And then she shows him actually a YouTube video and says, "Grandpa, it says like 90 million views." And he
Wow.
opened his eyes really big and he's like, "Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching."
Yeah, that's always You get the views on YouTube and everything. He
Logan
knows. Yeah,
Paul, same thing.
same thing. Yeah, it's all about. Yeah, he sees the money. He sees the money, and yeah, that's what it's about right there with Vince. You got that money. Yeah, he wants to make money. He's a promoter. He's a promoter, and yeah, that's what he does. But it's definitely a
Mastermind, I would say.
yeah, yeah, definitely a mastermind. I mean, he knows how to draw. He knows how to make a draw. But and he obviously knew, in some way, some fashion, how to beat WCW, and he legitimately put them out of business. And he wanted. I would say he wanted to put them out of business. I think he did, and I'm sure he was happy when he did so.
When it comes down to it, I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question right now. When it comes down to it, name five wrestlers from the Attitude Era, or you could say three, that you would identify yourself with from the Attitude Era.
Oh, the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Oh, I would say Stone Cold.
No, yourself. I'm talking about yourself. And
Myself.
why? Yourself.
Oh, identified myself with.
As a person, not as a wrestling fan.
Oh, as a person who I identified with.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, I identified with Triple H. I really was. I was a real big fan of Triple H, even when he was a heel. When he turned heel, I always felt like he was really an amazing character, like the game. He really spoke the truth, and he worked out. In fact, he inspired me to start working out. Triple H, and also I really was inspired by Mick Foley too. And him being the underdog and still rising above everybody else. And I always resonated with his character back then. But and if I had to choose one more, let me see. I was a huge fan of. I was a huge fan of Bret Hart actually too. The integrity that Bret Hart had. He was the excellence of execution. I feel like I try to be a perfectionist, and I was always making sure that I did things 100%. If I was going to do something, I was going to do it as the best of my abilities to do it. So yeah, that's who I identified with, really. What about you?
I would say that I had identified myself with Bret Hart because I was a perfectionist
Bret Hart,
myself.
yeah.
Number two, Kurt Angle
Oh, Kurt,
with the three eyes. I love
three
that.
eyes.
And then I would say number three. Hmm. I can't think of number three right now, right up off the top of my head, but I would say those are the major two for me because those people inspired me to have better confidence with myself as well.
Well, that's good. That's awesome. I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. These guys, they really touch so many people. That they mentally, and they really inspire people to do better. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing what these guys do. But I
If I
respect.
if I could identify myself with one other person, but not the person or wrestler itself, I would say is like when Shawn Michaels was living his boyhood dream. Remember that?
Oh, oh yes, yes. That was really amazing. Yeah, WrestleMania
Those
12.
vignettes right there. I was like the boyhood dream because I would say my boyhood dream was to be a broadcaster.
Oh,
And then
really?
I got to be later on in my life what I wanted to be, my boyhood dream, a broadcaster. So
Wow.
that's what I would say.
Wow, that's amazing.
And
That's
like
amazing.
Kurt Angle would say, never give up with anything. I never
Yeah.
give up.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, and then with well, never give up. That would be Cena in
Yeah,
future. Yeah, yeah, never
yes,
give
but
up.
I don't like Cena. I don't like Cena.
You don't like him?
I don't like Cena. It's just an old recycled character of Hulk Hogan.
Oh, you
And
think so? Yeah.
from what I've heard, you can see that Cena can be kind of flaky with his stuff. I've
Oh,
heard from
yeah.
people that he's nice, some people not so nice. I don't know what to believe.
I could see him having his issues. I could see that, or having his moments. But yeah, you never know. But I mean, for me, he was a pretty nice guy when we ran into him backstage WrestleMania 29. But you know, he's
I've gotten to meet so many people. Like you see all my autographs and stuff like that, and I'm completely baffled by sometimes the character you see on TV for wrestlers as
Mhm.
opposed to what they are in real life. So I'm like, okay, is this the guy I'm gonna get, or am I gonna get somebody else?
See, yeah, you sometimes you just never know who these guys are gonna be, But hopefully, these guys, they live up to their standards, and they do what they're supposed to do. That they're supposed to put smiles on people's faces. So you know,
We're the ones who pay for them. Come on now, think about this. I've been going to events. If a game would start like at 7 o'clock at night, people would get to the venues. The sports people start arriving like 10, 11 in the morning. Sometimes baseball players would arrive at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 12 o'clock. That's how early they have to be there for work. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to see this great guy that I see on TV. And then you see somebody signing an autograph on TV, but it's not actually what you see on TV. You see somebody in TV signing an autograph, and when I'm pressed, I'm gonna be straight up with you. I've seen this happen. That same person that you see signing the autograph, it's because they have a camera right around the corner. But when there's no camera, the person is completely fake about it.
Oh yeah, yeah, I could see that.
And then I'm like, okay, they're like, okay, this is what I need to do. No, man, we don't need that. I have found out the hard way. Being a broadcaster and being a fan, I've seen different stuff from people that I've actually looked up to, and I'm like, okay, this is nothing like what I've experienced in my life. I looked up to him as an idol, and then now I'm like, nah, not so much. But yeah, I would say this wrestling thing is great that we had the Monday Night Wars. It's what got us into wrestling,
Oh
pretty
yes,
much. What
yes,
made us
that's true.
love wrestling. If some of these guys from our stream or other streams that are coming in, if you guys didn't actually get to watch the Monday Night Wars, definitely go and watch Peacock and definitely look into what actually we're talking about right now. And you're going to be like, wow, this is really in depth what they're talking about. It's incredible that this is what helped the actual wrestling industry make it what it is today.
Yeah, it definitely shaped wrestling. I mean, I don't know what wrestling would have been without the Monday Night Wars. I mean, it really drove so much fans to the product, and it was just so amazing to watch it live, unfold before our very eyes. It was just some of the best wrestling that you could have seen during that time, and not to mention some of the best television at that time. Where else are you going to see an employee beating up their boss, or or,
Absolutely.
or
Think about this aspect about the Monday Night Wars. Think if we didn't have the Monday Night Wars, would we have seen Stone Cold? Would we have seen the NWO? Would we have seen Hogan in the
yeah,
NWO? I
I
don't
don't,
think so.
I don't think, I don't think so. I think, yeah,
We
it
would have
shaped.
seen Duke the Dumpster Josie, like I said, Triple
Yeah,
H fighting in a hog pen match. You could probably be seeing, let me say,
yeah,
uh,
you'll see the same old stuff. See like the regular Undertaker. Characters. Characters. And
you could
yeah,
see Mankind even. Mankind was starting out practically in '96,
yeah,
practically around that time frame.
right.
I enjoyed part of the Attitude Era. We don't talk about China. China was a strong part of the Attitude Era.
Oh, China, yeah. China was definitely. She was. Wow. I mean, China
She's
was
the one
a.
who's influencing Rhea Ripley's character nowadays. You could realize
Oh,
that.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, China was definitely a trendsetter. She was well ahead of her time. What she was able to accomplish. I mean, I don't think any other woman will accomplish. I mean, she won the Intercontinental title. I mean, two times, and she even fought for the WWF Championship before. And who knows what she could have accomplished? If things didn't go sour with her and Triple H and Stephanie, and who knows, right?
I think that China was actually the actual beast, the greatest woman in wrestling in that era. People
Oh,
would talk
absolutely.
about Trish, they would talk about Lita, they would talk Molly. No, man, it was way before all them. There was China. She was the one who made the movement from actual pretty faces. She wasn't that pretty of a face for some people, but you could look at her and say, this is what actually we need a woman wrestler as a dominating figure in wrestling.
Right. Yeah, China. She was such a good person, though. I mean, you could
She
tell,
had a
like,
kind heart. That's what I'm talking about.
yeah,
And
yeah, you could tell.
you could see that she had a character of a badass. But if you would
Yeah.
meet her, she would be a sweetheart.
Yeah, she was the nicest wrestler I've ever met in my life. And Yeah, she such a cool, kind-hearted person, and
Honestly,
yeah,
I wish WWE would have inducted her by herself into the Hall of Fame. That's
I
how I
wish
look at it.
I would have hoped so too. But I don't think we'll ever get a singles induction from China. But the fact that she's in it, the Hall of Fame already with DX, I think that that's definitely
A first
ama-
step.
yeah, it's definitely amazing that she's in the Hall of Fame. So, but she's not alive to see it, unfortunately, and it's I think it's a little too late, what they're doing, but at least they did uh, give her, you know, credit where credit was due, because she, like you said, she was really one of the top women performers in the Attitude Era. She really was. It's just a shame that the way things happened with China.
The fallout was absolutely bad. What happened there with Triple
Yeah,
H, Stephanie, and her. Otherwise, we could have seen China dominating for a whole decade, probably in WWF. That's how I look at it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, China was just a shame what happened with China. It's really a tragedy. But it Rhea Ripley, yeah, she's gonna carry out China's legacy, or embody her legacy. That would be great. I mean, I know Rhea even gave so much respect to China, and hey, we'll see what happens. I think Rhea's gonna be victorious at Mania, but hey, you never know.
I absolutely believe the same stuff with you. And I hope one day we could see Rhea Ripley going into a men's Royal Rumble and actually winning a Rumble. That would be an incredible feat in itself.
Oh, oh, that would be insane. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
imagine if they would do that as a homage to
to
China.
China.
And
Oh,
then she comes out and talks in the speech and she says something like that. And then probably they would eventually say, they do that and she wins it at WrestleMania. We're talking hypotheticals here, but that would be an incredible. And she would say, China was my inspiration for this. That would be incredible WrestleMania moment in itself.
I think, yeah, they would break so much like boundaries with that. I mean,
That's how
it,
I would book it. That's how I would book it.
that would be huge. That would be huge. I mean, I don't know if they would.
That would show you that Triple H is the better man doing that if he would do that.
Yeah, but I don't know if he can get that passed with if Vince is still there. Like
Mhm.
I don't
Well,
know.
remember, if they're going to sell the company, who knows? And they keep him in charge. And if Vince isn't there after they sell the company, there you
Oh,
go.
forget it. Yeah, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen after if they sell a company? I mean, anything could happen. At that point. I mean, who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen? But yeah, I mean, the Wars, Monday Night Wars was a credible time to be a fan. And like you said, Rory, if you were a fan during those times, you were a very lucky fan to watch it live. And yeah, some of the best times of wrestling right there.
I would hope that those times come, but those times are dead. But I want to say thank you to the wrestlers of all those times that we saw that performed for us, gave their lives up for us practically. Like Mick Foley, like when he got thrown off the cage.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
remember that? When would you see that? Right now, you could see Shane doing that, but who would do that before?
oh,
Mankind, Mick
man,
Foley.
yeah, Mick Foley. I mean that was really one. That was really a first too to see something that extreme. In WWE. I mean, Forget it. Yeah, I mean, we still talk about it today. Even it's been a quarter of a century. It's still like so extreme to see. Such a extreme match that they had. I mean, it, it'll live on. Like
You
Mick
remember
Foley.
that they would do dumpster matches too? That they would throw people off dumpsters?
Yeah, yeah. They did so much back then, man, that they can't get away with today, man. Like the bra and panties matches and forget it. Yeah, it was
Back
it's
then,
wild.
they would do it as a show, but they would be like, it was an incredible time for us to see it. But they were 2 or 3 minute matches. Now you get to see wrestling matches going back to 2 or 3 minutes. The only
Yeah.
ones you could probably see for 10 minutes, 15 minutes are the Becky matches, the Charlotte Flairs, and everything like that. But why do we have Charlotte's in the world? Because she's Rick's daughter. She's an
Oh,
incredible athlete, but come on. She's going to have the title for a lot of times. But come on. We need more people like Bianca to
yeah.
identify with other resonating fans because we see Charlotte winning, but many people say Charlotte's great, Charlotte's great. But if Charlotte wasn't Ric Flair's daughter, do you think she would be on top like that?
I don't know if she'd be on top like that, but honestly, I think she would have made it anyway, even if she wasn't Rick's daughter. But yeah, like you said, I don't know if she would have been like a
The face of the company.
13-time women's champion.
Hmm.
If she wasn't Ric Flair's daughter, yeah, I think for sure, yeah. I don't think she would have been that successful.
We need more people like the Liv Morgans of the world, like that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That
yeah, absolutely.
what did JB say?
Oh, he said Charlotte is an awesome performer. Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, no, yeah, no doubt about it. Charlotte is an awesome performer, but yeah,
Look
like
at Bianca. Bianca's amazing talent in herself. She benches. Look at Liv. Look at what's her name? The other one. Oh,
they,
Liv.
they got Shayna Baszler.
Baszler, is because of her UFC background, like Ronda.
Yeah,
Ronda brought
yeah.
her in. So obviously they're trying to appeal to different aspects. People who are liking UFC. That's amazing. That's why they brought Ronda in. Obviously, Ronda got tired of being in the UFC, but obviously they needed to bring her in. But they needed to bring in somebody like Paige Van Sant. Remember, she's in AEW right now. She
Oh
was going
right,
to be there. So
right.
we need more people, not just pretty faces. We need badasses also in the industry. And I
Oh,
see
no,
that
no
in
doubt
Liv's
about it.
character. You see that Liv can take a punch and take
Oh
the
yeah,
bad. Alexa Bliss is not just a pretty face. You can see her character, how she is as well.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's so gracious of all the fans. I've seen her at the live show. She slapped everybody's hand.
Who, Liv?
Yeah, everybody's hands, like in the first and second row. She went all around. She was the only wrestler to do that. She went all around. She made sure to greet everybody. I mean, I was amazed by that. I was like, wow, wow.
Speaking of Liv, she was yesterday at MSG at the Knicks game promoting their event that they have at MSG on Sunday.
On Sunday, oh, she was. I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was there,
Wow.
and
Yeah,
they're saying that she's an amazing person in and out of the ring. Obviously, you can see that. And
yeah.
it's like she identifies with these fans. You remember last week she lost on SmackDown, probably. You weren't on the stream, but because of
Oh,
Poppy's birthday, but they're
oh,
saying that she lost. And then there was a little girl crying her eyes out, Matt. And they took her backstage, the little girl. And she's like, how old are you? I'm like 8 or 9. The little girl said, in 10 years, if I'm still here, we're going to become tag team champions together. Imagine that.
Really?
And she would hug the little girl. And she's like, it's amazing. And she kept the family's phone number and everything like that. So that's amazing from Liv.
Hey, that is so cool.
She created a fan forever.
Forget it. I hope she that really happens. You know, like 10
Let's
years.
hope so.
Yeah.
Even if it's not in WWE, if she could even do an indie match with the little girl, she would be like, "Oh, my dream came true." Remember, WWE sometimes makes people's dreams come true.
They do, right? Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. We just know one thing. WWE made Boots' dreams come true with Rick Boogs' character.
Rick Boogs, yeah.
They look alike. They look alike.
Boogs,
I'm sure
yeah.
Boots and Boogs, they're gonna be like, what? The Booga or Boot Squad, something like that. Jeez.
Yeah.
Imagine that. They call him Boogs and you have a Boots in your stream. Come on.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
Like you had the Bum Corbin, then they
Yeah.
come up with Bum Corbin. Who's your insider?
It could be you. I don't know who it is, but
Jeez.
yeah. But all right, bro. Well, I want to thank you so much for.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing this with me, and I'm glad these guys enjoy the show. And I hope that next week's show is more entertaining, like last week's show. And hopefully, you all enjoyed it. If you guys didn't enjoy it, let us know. If you want to learn anything about any other thing, let us know what controversial topics you actually want to talk to us about. We will definitely be supportive of what you guys tell us as the feedback.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Anything you guys want to know about, let us know, and yeah, we'll definitely see what happens for the next show for Against the Grain here. Thank you to my co-host Burrito, and I'll catch you guys next time on the live stream. Have a great night, everybody. Be safe, be well. Matt Troy signing out. Good night, everybody.